We need more money.
Own it. Yo, George, you have something we can adapt?
Oh, sure. I have this novel I published in 19... Come on, George, just give us the goods already. Okay, Knight of the Seven Kingdoms.
Yes!
That's precisely how it went. I was there. Knight of the Seven Kingdoms' third episode just aired and people seem to enjoy it. The show has a light-hearted approach to the very grim A Song of Ice and Fire universe and it's been working well so far. Most characters are faithful to their book counterpart, we have a very likable protagonist duo, and of course, top-tier HBO level production. The question is, will this Game of Thrones prequels thing really make up for the astronomical success of the original series? It won't. But that's not so bad, it's just the way things are nowadays. You see, Game of Thrones was one of the last shows of TV monoculture. I just made an entire video on monoculture, but in a nutshell, monoculture is what makes these shows and franchises become cultural events. Everyone watches them or at the very least is familiar with them. However, that's not the case anymore. Pop culture is on life support. Let's take a look at House of the Dragon, the official next Game of Thrones. The numbers were pretty good and comparable to the original show, but if we take a closer look, the second season had fewer views by about 50%, and not only that, numbers aren't everything. Let's be honest, it just doesn't feel the same. As a fan, I loved the first season, but now I don't have the whole world talking about my favorite show. It's more of a niche thing made for fans who know all the dragons' names. Drogon, Vhagar,
Caraxes, Meraxes, Valyrian, Moondancer, Dreamfire, Cannibal.
But who cares, right? As long as I get my prequels and they are good and well written. Oh no. I don't care what you think about Season 2, fact is, it completely fucking sucks. They ruined the characters, the plot was confusing, and showrunner Ryan Caldwell decided to ignore all of Martin's advice. What could go wrong? Worry not, a Knight of the Seven Kingdoms will not commit the same mistakes. I sincerely hope. HBO has little motivation to screw things up because the book already has enough original material. Their only job is to adapt. The bad news is, once this series is over, they won't have any more material from George Martin. George himself already declared that House of the Dragon is not his story anymore. It's more like an adaptation vaguely based on his work. And once it is over, we won't even have any more of his work to directly adapt. That doesn't mean we won't have stuff to adapt. A movie about Aegon's conquest has been recently confirmed, and there are several other possibilities. But the thing is, we will be at the mercy of the showrunners, and the showrunners are more. We have an amazing fantasy world with incredible lore at the hands of highly incompetent people. That reminds me of something. What happens to Star Wars is just sad. I don't even like to talk about it. They have the dopest world building, the dopest characters, the dopest everything, and can't make cool shit that people fuck with to save their lives. It's like having the biggest oil reserve in the world and still manage to be poor somehow. But why? How can these multi-billionaire companies with infinite resources make such bad entertainment? It all comes down to one single word: writing. It's okay if you enjoyed House of the Dragon's second season, but Game of Thrones last season was objectively bad. You could say that the CGI was great, the acting held up, the soundtrack by Ramin Djawadi, and the soundtrack was god tier. You'd be right. All of these are very important and were high quality. But they are not the most important. What matters most is the story that is being told. A master storyteller can't save a story that fucking sucks. Game of Thrones showrunners, also known as D&D, did an amazing job at adapting the books when they had original material to directly adapt. But when the show reached the book's end of the timeline, things started to get weird. Personally, I still enjoy season 5 and 6, but I admit that they weren't as great. And most of the fans agree. There's a very clear pattern here. HBO does great when they have to write a direct adaptation, which is harder than most people think, but when they put George Martin aside out of necessity or deliberate choice, things usually go downhill. This is because writing is very hard. Not only that, but differentiating good from bad writing is also very hard. Consider these two pieces of 3D modeling. Take a look at this shot. Now this one. The difference is crystal clear. The one is good, the other is shit. You can't do the same with pages and pages of script. It would require weeks, if not months, to fully analyze a full season of script. And even after all this time, people can still disagree on what works and what doesn't, because writing is much more subjective than visuals. It's hard to say that Arcane doesn't look fantastic, but it's much easier to say that the writing is not that good. I know people who think that The Office is not very funny, but not a single soul says that Spider-Verse looks bad. There's a movie out there named Hoodwinked. The animation hurts your eyes, but trust me, this is a comedy masterpiece. And it could never work the other way around. Good visuals can save a script that isn't funny in the first place. Several horror movies were made with a $3 budget and worked nonetheless. Therefore, is writing all you need? If we're talking about comedy or horror, yes, that's pretty much all you need. But if you want to make a drama, well, you need all the rest too. Metastasis is a shot-for-shot Colombian Breaking Bad remake that is not very well made. The script is exactly the same as the original. What went wrong then? Everything else, especially the acting, since drama needs good acting. Game of Thrones would never work if the dragons looked like this and the actor acted like this. That is the exact reason why amateur filmmakers often start making horror or comedy. They don't need a big budget and creativity is what matters most. But why do bad scripts even exist? These companies have gorillions of dollars. How in the world can't they afford to buy a good script? The truth is, they don't even need to. Making movies is a business. This stuff needs to make money above all else. Why would you bother spending time and energy writing a good script if you can just write a shitty one and get the same result? Some franchises are so established and have so many fans they can afford making bad writing for decades because people will watch anyways. The name sells for itself. I myself watched all of the Star Wars sequels even though they're one of the worst movies ever made, and of course I didn't miss Game of Thrones last season. Marvel's audience only started to drop after several questionable movies. As long as it makes money, bad scripts will get greenlit by studios anyway. But that's not even the case most of the time. The thing about writing is that money often gets in the way instead of helping. Let's say you have a genius idea for a script and wrote it all down. You need studios to buy your script, but after another revision you realize it is not that commercial. You make some adjustments, but overall it's still your script. Then you got lucky and a producer actually decided to buy it. But they made tons of notes and hired more writers to rewrite some stuff. The movie is now in production and a director was hired, but he also decided to make some changes of his own. The actors also have their own vision on the characters and decide to make changes in the script either by notes or by improvising. Your movie is now in post-production and the editing gives the final touch on the text with changes of its own. By now you should have noticed that the movie ended up completely different from your original idea. It's not remotely close to the script you wrote, but instead a complete mess that went through several layers of rewrites and revisions from dozens of people who didn't even bother to understand what your idea was about in the first place. You can't judge a script by its movie. And that's not even the worst case scenario. The worst thing that could happen to a movie is what happened with The Flash. The Flash is by far the shittiest movie I ever saw in theaters and possibly in my entire life. It's no wonder the production was as messy as it could be. They changed directors multiple times, the movie went through development hell for several years, and the lead actor was a convicted felon. It's even hard to point out who is the one to blame for this disaster. It's Ezra Miller. What can we do about it? Are we condemned to get shitty writing every time? There's actually something we can do. That would be not to give these companies our hard-earned money. Don't buy tickets for Black Widow 5, cancel your subscriptions, or at least don't give these bad shows your precious time. Of course, easier said than done, but that's the only thing we can do as consumers to make bad writing not profitable. The thing is, what bad writing even means. Objectively bad movies are a thing and I mentioned some of them previously, but what if the audience is divided? Zack Snyder's DC phase certainly divided the fan base. Some enjoyed his aura-forming, looks-maxing, hunter-eyes, Sigma male version of Superman, while others thought it was kinda off. My cinephile friends convinced me not to get tickets for Thor Ragnarok, only for me to watch it on streaming later on, and actually I found it quite fun. Certainly not a masterpiece, but I wouldn't regret giving $15 for a ticket. It's very subjective. At the end of the day, what really matters in whether a show or movie will flop or not is how much curiosity it can create in people's heads. That's even true for YouTube videos. If you want views at all costs, all you need is a shameless thumbnail, an over-the-top title, and a good 5-second hook at the beginning. That's literally it. Your content doesn't even need to be good. Game of Thrones spin-offs will never flop because the fanbase is huge and fans like myself will never stop consuming them, even if they are written by an illiterate badger. That's also the case for Star Wars, Marvel, and pretty much all of the successful franchises. No wonder many reboots and remakes are so disappointing. They can afford to be since they rely on the franchise's popularity, while an original standalone movie has the burden of having to prove itself for the audience. Hollywood realized this way before most people think. Between 1931 and 45, Universal Studios made 6 Dracula movies, 5 werewolf movies, and 4 Frankenstein ones. Like it or not, cinema has always been an industry that needs these juicy dollars. However, there's something else we can do to reverse this trend, and the best part is, we don't even need to stop watching our beloved slop. That will be to give standalone productions a chance. There's a ton of excellent films every year and some of them even get to the mainstream with very high ratings. Studios need to be rewarded for creating exciting new stuff instead of milking the same old cow over and over again. Thanks for watching and feel free to insult me in the comments. My last video wasn't that big of a hit, but I'm really glad some of you enjoyed it. Thanks for the compliment and see you next time.